Alright, very welcome along. It's Thursday morning, it's 7:30. This is OTB AM. It's Jerry Gilroy, Shane Hannon and Colm Bouygues with you this morning. Gentlemen, how are you?
Alright, lads.
How are things?
What's going on?
Mildly hungover, Shane?
Only mildly. I was very...
You're young, you see.
Exactly, yeah. It was, well, don't feel it sometimes, but yeah, it was a brilliant night. I was at the Roadshow last night. Just the Champions League Roadshow with the lads. Nathan and Joe did a stellar job as per usual. Graeme Souness, Wes Brown, John O'Shea.
Graeme Souness was a late replacement for Paul Merson. It was good time to get Souness because he's finishing up his guy, right? Yeah,
he made the hint and joked that he's not used to being a substitute, at which there was an awkward but funny silence. And he was in brilliant form. He said the decision to leave Sky was not his own, that he would have liked to have stayed on. But at the way it was going for him, he was getting 1 year deals, and he expected and hoped maybe he'd get another 1 year deal, and sadly didn't. Sky decided, as he said, to move in a different direction, and he was quite okay with that decision. He said he's had a couple of offers already.
I was going to say, Graeme Souness issues come and get me plea to BN Sports /CBS / is it CBS or NBC?
Keys and Gray, is it? Yeah. No, he kind of laughed off the Keys and Gray suggestion from, I think it was Nathan. And he said he said one of the two offers, one's in media, it appears, and the other is within football. Which was an interesting shout. Now, Nathan was like, "Oh, you're mad going back into management," and he said, "Well, not necessarily management.
Director of football style.
Could be something.
President."
Yeah. So he seemed interested in the offers.
Like if you're Rangers, for example, and you're bringing back Graeme Souness to oversee some kind of reputational enhancement, some kind of shield for the board, I can see why the club would look at that. From his perspective, though, like, is it a role where he's going to have power to influence things?
Yeah, you'd wonder. And he's a man, like, as was pointed out last night, he turns 70 next weekend.
Wow, he looks amazing.
He looks unbelievable.
For a guy who has had his heart issues as well when he was a very young man at Liverpool, when he was player manager.
He goes swimming 4 mornings a week with a couple of mates at 6:30 every morning. Has a gym that he uses in his gaff. But clearly stays in a remarkable nick. Has 6 kids as well, the youngest of which is 23, so I guess that keeps him young as well.
What?
I know.
That does not keep you young, Shane. That does not keep you young. That's the opposite.
I would have thought, if you're 23-year-old, it keeps you in touch with
it
all
doesn't
the
keep
kids.
you young. It's like constantly stressed.
I suppose.
He had a kid when he was 47.
He's
God.
Plenty of time for you, Colm.
Yeah, exactly. He was in
math on it. Wow.
He at one point he was given out about the modern game in football.
They have this. You don't have to. It's just for everybody out there watching. Just go on.
After what?
You don't have to have the kid.
True. Yeah.
You can.
Are we having this chat now?
You can prevent it from happening if you want to.
Advice from me and Colm here.
There are numerous methods that maybe you don't get taught in Irish schools.
Maybe we'll talk about this later.
We'll talk about it now if you want.
Post-production meeting maybe. He started giving out about the modern game. Pre-production. Sorry, yeah, which should be the case. He stood up at one point and started saying, "What's all this crap about when coaches opening up binders before a player comes on? Like, surely the work is done at that point." And then he started doing all this crack with managers, using the hand gestures on the sideline, and he clearly wasn't a fan of that. He even stood up at one point to gesture how much he doesn't like it. Yeah, Tony Adams essentially. There was the other big moment from the night, I think, was when John O'Shea was asked about Evan Ferguson.
Oh yeah.
And I was thinking, John's on the coaching staff now at the senior setup. Stephen Kenny gave him a call. He's going to play this down, and he said, basically, mark my words, Evan Ferguson will threaten Robbie Keane's goal scoring record.
Wow.
And everyone was like, whoa.
Wow. Expect that in your social media feed very soon, I'd say.
When we say it, we're absolute lunatics getting carried away with ourselves. Choo-choo, hype train. But
he leaned into it then.
He knows a thing or two about
that's
football.
amazing. Yeah. Directly involved with them in the Irish setup as well, to say that.
He said he's not currently as focused on goals as Robbie was perhaps at that age, but the rest of his game is unbelievable, but the goals will come. And he said once the tap is open, I suppose, then there's no turning it off.
I don't care if he threatens Robbie Keane's goal record, if he becomes a player who also creates, like if he is a more assist creator as well, because that's, in a way, it's kind of harder to mark.
Yeah.
It's more influential in games over the long run,
Yeah, and John he spoke very highly of Brighton and the work that Zerbi. He was asked at one stage, I think, by one of the lads, who is the best manager in world football at the moment. And the name he first came to was Roberto Zerbi.
Wow.
As someone, he said at Stoke, he watched him up close when they played Brighton, I think, in the FA Cup this season, and he said he's so impressed by Zerbi and just the in-game management.
Well, he doesn't know our league, does he?
Well,
what?
This is it.
Who said that? Was it Merce? It was Merce, wasn't it?
Merce, yeah, right. Possibly.
Well, that would have been an interesting little moment. No.
Not having it.
Well, he knows our league now, Paul, doesn't he?
He certainly does. But yeah, O'Shea spoke glowingly of the work. John would have played with Barry Ferguson, Evan's dad, at the Toulon Cup years ago when they were under 21s.
Wow, okay.
So I would know that the family quite well. But
circles within circles here.
Yeah, essentially. That was really good. Like, even they spoke about that Cristiano Ronaldo Sporting Lisbon match when O'Shea was supposedly absolutely destroyed by a young Ronaldo.
He was. Supposedly about it.
Have you seen it? Is there footage of it?
There is footage.
It was live on Eurosport at the time. I remember that.
Was it?
Yeah, I didn't vividly remember that game being live.
I assumed it was one of those things that was reported on, ethereal and not actually in existence. It was on Eurosport. Okay.
Yeah, they were flying home from Lisbon that night.
Yeah.
And the players said they went up to Ferguson in the plane, like the senior players, boss, you got to sign this kid. And he was like, don't worry, lads, I'm on it. Right. Turned out that they went straight to him in the dressing room afterwards, being like, you're coming home with us. And he was like, no, I need to stay for a while. A week later, he was back.
Right.
At Old Trafford.
But O'Shea said he was jet lagged for that match because they'd come back from the States.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So that was his excuse. Got them in early. Yeah. Really good. Wes Brown added a lot to it as well. He does a lot of work with MUTV and kind of can speak very, very well, Wes. They analysed the cross for the Ronaldo header in the 08 Champions League final.
Oh, yeah.
Being around Ferguson as not a hands-on coach, but the impact that Ferguson would have had with all those coaches over the years, Muhlenstein and Phelan and McLaren.
Wes Brown was in with us the morning after the Roy Keane Gary Neville Roadshow, and he was the one who told us that it had gone straight to the WhatsApp group from the Man United players who were like, have you seen what Keane said? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Right.
Yeah. Wes said he had seen the MUTV tape of because obviously John O'Shea was asked about the MUTV tape, and Roy Keane laying into, among other players, John O'Shea quite heavily.
Oh, was O'Shea part of it?
O'Shea was one of the players.
I didn't realise that.
Really heavily laid into it, and John was he wasn't asked about it too often, this question, but he said, look, it's something that Roy would have said to him many times. It wasn't like the tape was mad shocking. And Wes Brown said he has seen the tape, of course, and he was in the room when it was played to the players, and he didn't think it was that bad.
Right.
Like the players,
it's just an excuse to get rid of him because they thought he was washed up.
Yeah, 100%.
They decided that they didn't want to pay him the most money anymore, and that the power that he had was out of whack with what the contribution that they thought he was getting.
He was injured at the time, of course, as well. They had no use for him.
Well, if Roy was in his prime when this tape comes out.
Oh, they were like, look what Roy's saying. You guys all better follow him.
Yeah, it was John O'Shea, Kieran Richardson, Rio Ferdinand, wasn't it? Karen Fletcher. Those names were the ones called out. There's saying here in the comments, Souness was saying the very kind stuff about Zerbi.
Well, O'Shea brought his name up first, but then Souness backed him up, and was complimentary.
That's right, two of them said it.
Yeah. Both complimentary of Roberto Zerbi and the work they're doing with younger players. But there was a lot of really interesting things out of it.
Yeah.
But the Evan Ferguson line, I think, had everyone excited. And then Souness said he hadn't seen him live, but he's watched a lot of Evan Ferguson, and he's going to be a big star, he said. So
I have a review in here from a regular of the show.
Right.
Souness, the standout. Some heavy questions on him about mortality, which threw him a little, I think. Definitely made him open up after that. Crowd loved him.
Well, it was quite funny because the first portion was just Graeme by himself. And then you had John O'Shea and Wes Brown by themselves, and then the three lads. But the portion of Graeme by himself saw another side to him. At one point, Joe asked him, because his 70th birthday is approaching, he asked him, do you ever think about your mortality? There was a bit of an awkward oohs and ahs from the crowd, but Joe then reiterated he didn't mean it in an offensive way. Graeme did not take it in an offensive way. But it led to an interesting road talking about his health and that incident, as he say, Colm, when he had a few blocked arteries, I think, at 38, and opted for the surgery. And he said, looking back, he regrets going for the surgery. He only went for it because he's in a stressful job. A couple of his uncles had died quite young from heart issues, so he figured he didn't want to be one of those. But it led to a really fascinating other side to Graeme Souness that I hadn't seen.
What was the alternative to the surgery?
Kind of take your chances, because obviously the recovery from the surgery was quite heavy on him as well.
All right.
But probably hindsight to 2020, but he probably made the right decision regardless of his regrets.
Maybe there's drugs now. Maybe you stick him on the statins and he's grand. I don't know.
Yeah, possibly.
If there's any cardiologist watching this morning, you might just out of pure nosiness.
Yeah, drop us a line.
Yeah, exactly. How would you have treated Graeme Souness 30 years ago?
Yeah. But no, it was a fascinating night, and just to see the dynamic between even John and Wes talking about actually really fascinating their Sunderland days, talking about Paulo Di Canio as manager.
Were they mates? Like,
they were mates, yeah.
And it comes across that they're mates, not
Big
just
time.
like they weren't just teammates, they were mates.
Yeah, spent most of their careers together because even when they left United, they were at Sunderland. And
for longer than I thought, actually. I was looking up each of their respective times at Sunderland. They were there for quite a while, Brown.
Yeah,
O'Shea.
significant
Especially
time.
O'Shea.
The Canio management, like, I did not realise how attention to detail Paulo Di Canio was. He said at one point they were stopped from, they couldn't use mouthwash. There were other things in their diet that they could not use under Paulo Di Canio. And he also, and John O'Shea said this with I didn't like this portion of Di Canio's management. He said there was a guy who worked at the Stadium of Light, and he had worked there for decades. Like, this was an older gentleman who was part of the fabric of Stadium of Light and Sunderland Football Club, and the players used to shake hands with him or whatever, or give him a hug on the way into every match. And Di Canio said, "No more. I don't want you shaking his hand. It's putting you off before a match." He wanted the walk to the dressing room to be completely head down. So
John O'Shea saw the global pandemic coming.
Yeah, possibly. But he queried O'Shea, I think, and Brown were two of the leaders in that Sunderland team. He probably queried that sort of decision making.
Yeah, it sounds nonsensical.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Where's Paulo now as the manager?
Yeah.
How did that work out for him?
Well, they said if Paulo was a calmer character, he would have been a brilliant manager.
I mean, you could say the same about Roy Keane, right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you could. I don't know. I actually think Roy Keane is a brilliant TV pundit, particularly in light of the stuff that, you see what Brawley was saying at the weekend, and you remember the times watching the Ireland games and going, "This is a shit game," and then on comes Dunphy and Giles and Brady, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's something else happening here that I'm unaware of.
Yeah.
So maybe Paulo Di Canio could be a world-class TV pundit.
Jeez, he's 10 years out of management, Di Canio. That was 10 years ago. That's
is he doing TV?
Don't know, I haven't heard from him in a long time. Saw him in a documentary a couple of years ago, and I was, oh yeah, Paulo.
Right, if you want to get in touch with us, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can leave a comment on youtube.com/off the ball. Make sure you hit subscribe on YouTube, and if you're listening to our podcast, by the way, and I'll rate on Apple, you can leave a comment there as well. We do read them all eventually. Harry Pryor's coming up at 8 o'clock to talk Liverpool and the WSL. Mark Brehney and Finian Hanley are going to preview the Connacht football final for us. One JD, please. He's back at 8:40. Our quarter-final preview, it is Ulster versus Connacht. Cameron's going to join us for that. Graham Hunter's going to join us at 9:10. Lots and lots of Barcelona and Messi and Real Madrid and Spain news. If you haven't seen this, the headline this morning is about Leo Messi and how much money he's going to make in Saudi Arabia. Where's the money?
I think it's 320 million.
Messi's 320 million sterling a year is the front headline on the Telegraph. So the trip to Saudi Arabia was not just a little jaunt to help them advertise their tourism industry as it has been defended. It was like, he'd made his plans, there was no training, and then they rearranged training and he couldn't change his travel plans. He couldn't get his private jet to take off a few hours earlier. He couldn't? Okay. That was the Paris Saint-Germain route. Of course, Paris Saint-Germain, owned by Qatar? Mm-hmm. Saudi Arabia and Qatar, not the best of mates.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's the way I read into it. Yes,
okay. Yeah. And so what's going to happen is he's going to go for $400 million for 1 year, £320 million, and he'll sign for whatever club they tell him to sign for. Not quite sure yet which one.
Al Hilal seems to be the team mentioned, isn't it?
Is it? But I think so. Ronaldo joined Al Nassr, and their traditional rivals are Al Hilal, and it looks like they would place him with them. But Ronaldo will be gone. Yeah. Maybe Ronaldo looks at this and goes, "Oh, you're bringing Messi, and how much is he getting? Oh, maybe I'll stay now, but you have to give me the same."
So they're going to pick the club for him. They're going to force him to play for a certain club. This is kind of like Frank Sinatra in Vegas, isn't it? When he was like, he had to play there like night after night. Didn't even want to, but he was forced by the powers that be.
Yeah. The mob.
Yeah.
Well,
he didn't want to do it. He wasn't happy. He was miserable.
Did he not make his own bed?
Regrets, I've had a few. Oh. Then again, too few to mention. That they could have been some of them. And this could be the Messi situation.
Do you think Leo Messi will regret earning $320 million a year?
I think Messi would regret losing control of his own destiny.
He's going to go back to Barcelona, isn't he?
2 years? I don't think so. I think this is...
It's a principle though, isn't it? Could be 2 years or 20.
The other thing is...
I see the control of my life to other people.
Why would you...
I'll get that back.
Yeah, but you get the money. They bought your control and they paid you well for it.
Sure.
Well compensated.
It's life, I suppose, isn't it?
What would you... Why did Barcelona want him back at this stage of his career?
Swan song.
Are you basing that because I don't need him? Because they're performing okay domestically?
No, it's more a there's a lot of emotion involved in it, but they're getting somebody who is not as good as he was. And granted, okay, so you'll have the Messi Museum and you'll sell a load of shirts and all that stuff is, the brand of the world's biggest brands will want to be associated with him. Fair enough. The shirt thing is less important these days than it used to be. But I'm just not sure if you're Barcelona, you've already moved on from him and you have a bunch of kids. You're going to sell some of those kids to raise the money. Now, maybe they're not that good, but they're certainly good enough to be important players for Barcelona for the next 10 years, 7 years, 5 years, which isn't the case with Messi. You're going to get maximum 2 seasons out of him. And are you going to win a Champions League with Messi in your side? I'm just not sure. The greatest player of all time, and your association with him is forever there. But it's going to be forever there. And if he just goes off now, you don't have to pay him ridiculous amounts of money, which obviously he'll want.
I think if he goes back, then his legacy will be, remember that fling you had, that affair you had with PSG?
Yeah.
But you came back to us in the end because you realised you loved us. A bit like the end of Network.
It wouldn't be like the Ronaldo return to United, would it? It couldn't go that far south, surely.
Like all of this, I think the Ronaldo thing is different in that he cheated on Manchester United with Real Madrid and had all his best years at Real Madrid.
They agreed to that separation, Fergie and Ronaldo. I think we should see other people. And he came back.
It's not you, it's me, but it's definitely you.
They were better as friends, as it turned out. But Messi and Barcelona are lovers, and they will be reunited. They just had a big falling out 2 years ago.
This is getting very graphic. Very graphic.
But also, it's a good point about Messi. Would he disturb the rhythm and the momentum of Barcelona? He's one of a handful of players that will actively and visibly change the behaviour of his teammates around them, because everyone's so aware that Messi's on the pitch. So you change what you're about to do. You second guess what you're going to do with the ball because Messi's there. So he'll obviously drop deeper. He'll probably play as part of a midfield 3. But he also showcased that at the World Cup, he's still brilliant. He can be when he's motivated. Can you motivate him for a whole season?
It's very difficult. It's really very difficult, and it's going to get less and less easy to do that. And also the World Cup was, the one thing that he really needed to do. He's already won literally everything that's possible to win with Barcelona. So I don't know. We will talk to Graham Hunter about this a little bit later on. If you have any thoughts on it, we'd love to hear from you. We should talk about some of the other big stories from yesterday. You were about to go. I'm going to go Big Sam here.
Oh yeah, this is actually a really good point, right? Because we have it in the running order that Erling Haaland has broken his Premier League goal scoring record, and we're 17 minutes into the show and we haven't talked about it, but for good reason, because I think people are a bit apathetic towards the whole thing and towards Manchester City's dominance, unless you're a Man City supporter. It's really it was quite feeling. I think if there's anybody else, any other club, Mo Salah has 29 goals this season. I think if Salah had scored 35 Premier League, we'd probably be starting with Salah. But there's something to do with Haaland is this kind of freak of nature machine. There's the soullessness of Man City. I personally enjoy watching them. I think their football is sensational. But I understand the naysayers who are like, whatever. 3-0 against West Ham, 0-0 after 54 minutes. That's about as exciting as it got.
It's just like Erling Haaland is programmed to score this many goals. He's like a robot. You just press a button and he scores that many goals. You just insert the 2 digits and you tell the computer how many goals you want him to score.
What?
This is what he's done.
But it is phenomenal.
Cardiology, proctology, whatever you want on the show this morning.
His first competitive game for Man City, Community Shield, missed the sitter, blazed it over right there, open goal. And the first game of the season away to West Ham, the corresponding fixture, scored a penalty. I don't think anyone envisioned 51 goals later. By the way, he's 12 off Dixie Dean's all-time record from 1927-28. So he has 9 games if they make the Champions League final to break the all-time goal-scoring record ever.
All right. Allardyce.
All right, exactly. And then everyone's like, okay, yeah. Anyway, on to the other news.
Well, Allardyce went full Stephen Ireland, says Latte Larry, which is about the best tying up of the 2 big stories in terms of the egos have landed this week. And it's true. We haven't even mentioned Robbie Keane. That's as left field a shot and shout as I remember. I did not have Robbie Keane in my Sam Allardyce bingo for he's going to be the guy in the touchline. Phil Brown used to do that role for Big Sam. Did Kevin Nolan do it at some point, or am I mixing that up?
I think he played from West Ham. Wasn't he as captain at West Ham? I don't know if he was.
He's doing it now for Moisey. So it's a big opportunity for Robbie Keane to suddenly get back into football.
He #knows the club. Do you know?
Well, does he? He wasn't there that long.
Well, he was there
for a year and a half.
Year and a half's long enough to get to know the club, isn't it? He knows the area, he knows the town, he knows the training ground. He knows
the area. It's been 20 years.
Leeds hasn't changed.
It's all changed.
20 years.
Yeah, he went on loan initially from Inter, I remember that loan spell was great, and then they made the transfer permanent 01-02, and he was gone then at the end of that.
Well, that's the
brief.
I mean, you could definitely have a 10-part Netflix series on those 3.5-4 years at Leeds.
The Ridsdale years, incredible.
Like Ridsdale, slightly ahead of his time in that he massively borrowed on the back of the fact that the team was going to earn loads of money to get into the Champions League, and then the team couldn't get into the Champions League. You could say this is basically what the Glazers have done, is make a lot of money off the back of borrowings. But anyway, I think it's time for Peter Ridsdale's reappreciation.
Yeah, I don't remember the Leeds fans at the time complaining at the height of it when they had this incredible squad and they were going deep into the Champions League. Yeah,
well, the squad initially had been built on the young players and a few astute signings. Remember, George Graham came in, he left. I can't even remember, was there controversy around him leaving? David O'Leary stepped up and wasn't supposed to be getting the job, and then he got the job because he took them on a great run, and then they started splashing out ridiculous money. But there was a story about the amount of money that they'd spent on exotic fish, and it was thousands. And as the club was careering into oblivion, it turned out 2 decades of oblivion, the fish was kind of this symbol of the waste. The other one was one of the players came in, Seth
Johnson.
Was it Seth Johnson who came in
from Derby,
and was like the story about how much money he was getting paid was he kind of paused shocked, and they jumped in and doubled it because of the pause.
Yeah.
And then it ended up that the story was he got 3 times more than he had expected to. And I was like, okay,
I'll take this.
He talks about that subsequently. He was like, it's the hardest I've ever had to bite my tongue not to laugh or to get too excited because of that pause when they doubled it. Yeah, but that was the time, like, they were just high on life.
Keane Rowe was commenting on the YouTube, lads, that was genius from Big Sam, takes all the pressure off the players and all the attention on him. Jose-esque.
That's
for anyone who hasn't heard these comments,
that is absolutely not why he was doing that. Like, he just thinks he's great.
I might be 68, this is Sam yesterday for anyone who hasn't heard it. I might be 68 and look old and antiquated, but there's nobody ahead of me in football terms. Not Pep, not Klopp, not Arteta. It's all there with me. They do what they do and I do what I do. In terms of knowledge, I'm not saying I'm better than them, but I'm certainly as good as they are. That's genius from Big Sam Allardyce.
And he was taking sips of water in between the sentences too to add to the power play. That he's very relaxed.
The little pause.
And you're on my time.
Is that what you're doing now? Just a little.
Just reminded me. Oh, Bobby Dwyer's in the comments. I'd say he is ahead of him this morning.
He's awake. You're awake, Bobby. Yeah.
He had a good night.
He did have a good night. He was getting selfies with Nathan Murphy, his hero. Last night. So good night for Bobby.
Nathan, just by the way, Nathan loves it when you fanboy him. That's his favourite thing in the world. So if you're out there and you spot Nathan, and if he happens to be munching on an illicit croissant or cookie in Super Value or Tesco or wherever it is he shops, he likes nothing more than somebody getting a selfie, particularly with bits of crumbs on his face.
Oh yeah, I was standing at the bar and Nathan was trying to kind of sneak off back into the stage room after taking his countless selfies, and I shouted Murphy across the bar, and he was probably thinking, oh, happy days, this is another fan. But turns out it was just his colleague Shane waving over at him. So
did yourself and Bobby get a selfie?
Bob did get a selfie with me as well. Yeah. Probably to send to yourself. I think he wanted to send it to yourself. He was disappointed that he didn't get to meet his other hero, Colm, of course.
Oh, you're his hero?
No, you.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's other hero.
100%.
Okay, yeah.
No, I'm certainly not his hero. But it was a good night. It was a good night's crack.
Yeah. Seamus Coleman.
Yeah, Seamus Coleman. Seamus Coleman, obviously, yesterday, a report comes out that an Instagram account, a picture of Seamus on the stretcher, fist up, going, and no ACL damage, good news, back soon. And then you search Seamus Coleman Instagram and nothing comes up. A bunch of Seamus Coleman fan accounts come up, and then you look at the Everton and it's like, so Robbie Keane wished him best at Shamey23, I think is the handle. Then you go to it and it's like 400 followers and it's a private account. Like, is this real? Is this definitely real? But then Everton were the ones who shared it, so you have to assume that they're following their actual captain on his actual Instagram account. It has the bang of his missus saying, listen, you better get on Instagram because everybody else is on. He's like, yeah, okay, grand, but then doesn't do it. Just as like
private for his.
Yeah, he has like 14,000 requests and doesn't know how to answer them.
Yeah.
It is. It's a very small following, but and the picture's great that he or whoever chose was him geeing up the crowd from the stretcher.
Come on, the lads.
Which I thought was a great moment. But no, it's brilliant news ahead of next month's huge game in Greece.
Because I was thinking before the injury that there's a couple of years of Seamus Coleman playing in a new system for us if we want it, like being the leader on the field from the right of a 3
Yeah.
And stepping into midfield when he needs to. Like, he doesn't actually need to be the pacey player that he has been for his entire career for him to have a really important role within the Ireland setup, particularly at a time when the team is so bloody young.
Yeah, I think the only thing is, though, that is his game. He has pace and aggression and acceleration, speed.
But he's also brainy.
Definitely, yeah, but I think the other factors are probably more prominent in his game. He'll have to change.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's exactly. Yeah. Well, for the last couple of years, it's it'd be better, I think, for us to have him on the field, organising, cajoling, complaining to referees, like having status, which we don't have that many other players who had that status. I mean, obviously, you hope Ferguson does, but like, let him be busy scoring goals as opposed to making him captain. Hopefully Josh Cullen doesn't get replaced in the off season. Like, if Burnley are going to invest a load of money, which they might do, they might look at strengthening the midfield. You have to hope that he plays every minute next season in the Premier League. You have to hope that John Egan plays every minute in the Premier League. But after that, how many other Premier League players are we going to have next season?
He does. He's also one of those players who affects his teammates deeply.
Yeah.
Coleman. You see with the Everton contingent, when he went off in the stretcher, everybody was going over to him, wishing him well. And just the respect all the players have for him. It was on the start of the season, Damari Gray scored a winner, and they did a joint post-match interview. And Coleman was basically analysing Gray in the interview live, and Gray was just there, like, listening, nodding along to him, being Seamus said, look, he has all the talent in the world, but he needs to do it more. He was talking about him as if he wasn't there, but at the same time being very supportive, and Damari was just nodding along. And
if you think back, that's what Gundogan did about Haaland. Remember Haaland wasn't scoring and he was frustrated and not making the runs, and they were like, well, he's got to learn what to do, he's got to learn exactly where to go.
Sorry, on Haaland, Gary Neville made the very good point last night that imagine City passing the ball every time he made those runs, because oftentimes they ignored him, and they certainly did for the first half of the season. So he would have probably beaten Dixie Dean's record at this stage had they played him in every time he made those runs.
This is a really interesting moment in time for Manchester City, I think, because we can't forget the sanctions that are coming up, right? But also they're going to have an entirely new midfield next season. Like, it looks like Gundogan is going to Barcelona. Will Rodri still be there? I'm not sure. They're not getting Bellingham. That's the other news that's happened in the last 24 hours, is that the rumours of the Manchester City being thwarted by Real Madrid have definitely, it seems, come to fruition. I'm not really sure Jude Bellingham is a Real Madrid player, but anyway,
I think it's a great move for him.
I
think it's
a great move in terms of, like, you don't have the microscope from the English media.
Exactly, that's probably the big thing.
He's the Modric replacement straight in. Modric has yet to sign a new contract.
They're entirely different players.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, but
they're entirely different players. You can't say that he's the Modric replacement and then go. So, like, Jude Bellingham is not going to control a game. He's got explosive talents and attributes, and he will score a ton of goals.
Yeah,
but he's far more a cross between Frank Lampard and Brian Robson, whereas Luka Modric is a very unique player who was able to control games and create in a way that... So Bellingham will create by taking attention away from other players, by making runs. Luka Modric does not do that.
No, but he can run a game like Modric can.
He can't.
He can run a game.
No,
I think he can.
Not yet.
It's the same way that when Casemiro left, Tchouaméni comes in and steps up. I think Bellingham will step up. And
Tchouaméni's not in the team.
No, but I think
it's Camavinga who's in ahead of him.
Yeah, but I think Bellingham coming into that team, he'll get a lot of chances to play. He'll get so many.
But he's not going to run the game. That's not the type of. He actually, I genuinely think that he would have fit Liverpool's style of play if Liverpool are going to continue with their heavy metal football, like, and then you just become another English player.
Yeah, I think this is a miles better move. This is probably the best move he could have chosen. If he had gone to Liverpool...
What if he doesn't play that much?
But he's only 19. Okay, so if he'd gone to Liverpool and then Liverpool say, don't win the league next season,
they
probably won't. Then there's Jude, I thought you were supposed to be the saviour. Then he's only 20 and he has all this whole career ahead of him where he's like, another English flap who's overhyped. This way he goes, stays abroad, away from the Premier League, plays Real Madrid. He'll have, for about 80% of the games every season, he'll be in a dominant team. He'll have loads of time on the ball. He'll be playing with two other people around him because they played three. He'll have Camavinga, Tchouaméni, he'll have Toni Kroos, and he'll have Modric as well. He's going to learn off all of these players.
Why don't we get Jasmine Baba to do a piece for us about what type of player he is and compare and contrast him with other midfielders, particularly the ones he's replacing. Like, you'd say he's more a Toni Kroos replacement than a Luka Modric replacement.
But whatever about replacement, he's just adding to it, and he's going to learn so much from them. He does 2, 3, 4 years at Real Madrid, then goes to the Premier League. He has so much time ahead. I think it's a brilliant move for him.
I'm also a big fan of Camavinga, so he is.
Yeah, he's class.
It's going to be suddenly there's a really dynamic young midfield that they have access to. But the corollary of that is that who's going to be at Man City next season in midfield? Like, are they actually going to sell Calvin Phillips now? I don't know, but who are the 3 or the 2?
Well, they talk about second season syndrome negatively when a team gets promoted, has a great season, struggle the next time. It's the opposite under Pep. Oftentimes, players struggle in their initial campaign. Pep's very frustrated with them. They're not doing what he says. Second season's much better because they finally lose grip of control and like, Pep, tell me what to do. That's what Pep does. He micromanages all his players.
Their spirit gets broken.
Yeah.
So who are you saying?
Who for what?
Who's it going to be?
In midfield for City?
Yeah.
Jeez, I don't know. I have to think about it now. I have to think about it as I write a script for you.
All right, everybody, give us your Man City midfield next season. But the other thing is, of course, the sanctions that are coming. So this might be the end of the Manchester City period of dominance.